007 sequel to Jurassic Park, 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And today we're going to discuss minute 68 of The Lost World. Ending out a week here of a lot of talk and walking. Before we get into that, though, one little bit of news to go over. Video 15 has been released for the Lost World Restoration Project. The trail's in Huntington Beach, where it's in a secure yard, but it's going to be there. Work's halted for a couple of months while Frank has to go and do some other things, but then the interior work begins. So you can organise through their page to go and get access to the site and get some photos with it. You don't need to pay podcasts for episodes you can get from somewhere else for free. They've got I don't know if it's a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter page up. All the links are on their Facebook page, though. Go and throw them $5 or something and help them get the project going. Because now you might be me in a different country, or like you, Dave, on the other side of the country. But 5 to 10 years, you never know. You might be able to visit that area again, go and see it. And if it's been refurbished and rebuilt, then it's going to last a lot longer.
That's not the problem.
What is? What is the problem?
Velociraptors. Our infrared show that their nesting sites are concentrated in the island interior, which is why we plan to keep to the outer rim.
Wait a minute. What's that? Velociraptor. Carnivore. Pack hunter. About 2 meters tall, long snout, binocular vision, strong dexterous forearms, and killing claws on both feet.
Dave, ready to go for 68?
Yeah, sure.
Alright. As we enter minute 67 of The Lost World, Ian was grilling Roland for not respecting the death of Eddie Carr. As we start minute 68, Roland tells Ian that Eddie's troubles are over, and that his point is predators don't hunt when they're not hungry. Nick jumps in with only humans do. Not batting an eye, Roland starts walking away from the group and says, "Oh, you're breaking our hearts. Now saddle up, let's get this movable feast underway." 67 minutes and 10 seconds, we get a shot of waves pounding in the surf as a group of survivors start walking towards the island interior. At 67 minutes and 25 seconds, we cut back to night as a torrential downpour soaks everything. The group walks through a small stream, and Nick runs past everyone to catch up to Roland. At 67 minutes and 31 seconds, Nick offers Roland gum. Roland looks down, but continues walking, ignoring the offer. Nick asks Roland, "You look like you have a shred of common sense. What the hell are you doing here?" At 67 minutes and 40 seconds, Roland takes a look at Nick for a moment, and then says, "Someone on this island is the greatest predator that's ever lived, and the second greatest predator must take him down." Nick gestures to Roland's gun, and asks if he's going to use that. Roland replies, "If he doesn't surrender, yes." At 67 minutes and 51 seconds, after Nick tries to grab the end of the gun, Roland puts it on his other shoulder. Nick laughs to himself. The animals existed for the first time in tens of millions of years, and the only way you can express yourself is to shoot it. And as we end the minute, Roland asks Nick if he remembers that chap from about 20 years ago. And this ends minute 68 of The Lost World. After Ian sort of grilled Roland for not respecting Eddie's sacrifice in the previous minutes, Roland replies, "Well, his troubles are over," which, yeah, they're in survival mode here. Malcolm should know that they've just sort of gone from one danger and they're about to walk into another danger, and it's probably not the best place to have a child either. But Roland sort of turns and starts to walk away from Ian, and the camera pulls back, and Roland sort of says as he's walking away that my point is predators don't hunt when they're not hungry. Nick jumps back in here with only humans do, and Roland doesn't bat an eye. He just says, "Oh, you're breaking our hearts. Saddle up, let's get this movable feast underway." So, yeah, as we said towards the end of the minute, they've obviously seen that Eddie died, was eaten, and didn't go over the cliff. But either way, Malcolm sort of grilled him for his not respecting Eddie's sacrifice. And he doesn't have to trek across the island now. We get a nice shot here, which is either early morning or late evening.
I think it's supposed to be like middle of the night, but he needed enough light for the cameras to actually see the actors. So they
Okay.
filmed it at like probably early morning or late night, you know.
Yep. Yep.
But because the next shot we see is it's dark again.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I think it's like the previous scene. I mean, even though there's not really any lights, they just needed enough light for us to actually see what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the score picks up. Roland's leading the group. It's sort of you got the ocean. You can just see the ocean and the waves crashing behind them through the trees. So it's
Mhm.
sort of signifying that they're leaving the coast behind and heading inland. But then it cuts back to darkness again. It's raining really heavily.
Yeah. I
Sort
wonder
of
if they moved back into an area where the storm was still hadn't left, you know?
yeah.
If they moved back into the storm, if the storm was moving like from the north into the south and they just moved that way.
Hmm. Yeah, well, you normally too. If you get one sort of storm, there's a couple others dotted around it. Might be another front coming through.
Yeah, possibly. It's interesting that this entire shot there, this entire minute actually takes place on location. Completely different locations, actually.
Hmm.
The shot we get that's kind of or that's kind of like early morning, but it's not, was filmed at Kathy's Beach. And then this shot here, the shot where they're talking in the rain, was filmed at Fern Canyon, where Dieter later dies.
Yeah.
And so they just stuck a big giant sprinkler system and must have brought like a portable water tank and just filmed it that way because
Yeah.
they're walking along the creek bed, you know.
Hook a fire truck into it or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
No, there's a behind the scenes shot, and I'll post it up on the Facebook page and Instagram when this video goes live.
Yep.
It shows there's a camera on the track, and next to the camera is a like a hose with with water just kind of like spouting out of it, you know.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot of water falling here. Any hope of them staying dry is sort of gone. They're soaked to the bone. But yeah, we sort of brought this up in an earlier minute too that they went back to Eureka for this and didn't actually film it on the set. But
Yeah.
we get Nick here sort of pushes past a hunter and says, "Excuse me, cowboy," and stops by
deer.
Roland. Oh, is it?
I think it might be.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't tell, but I think it might be.
Yeah, because he's got the light pack on his shoulder, doesn't he? Is that hunter? Or is
Yeah,
it
he does.
Yeah.
But the nose looks like his.
Yeah.
You know, it's got that kind of parrot hook nose.
Yep. Yeah, but he runs up and sort of steps or comes into step beside Roland and asks him if he wants some gum, which that'd have to be wet because he pulls it out of his pocket and sort of unwraps it, and then Nick sort of puts it in his mouth and eats it. Well, Roland's just sort of like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I think I always kind of assumed that this was like Nicoderm gum or something like that.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
when Nick first gets to the island, he tries to light up a cigarette, and Sarah tells him not to.
Yeah.
So I think he's been chewing gum habitually every time he wants a cigarette.
Yeah, good point. And he would have surely either Hammond or Sarah would have told him in the initial briefing that hey, you're not smoking on islands, even though he took a pack with him anyway. But he would have had to try and get some gum or something to sort of get around those cravings while he's there. But in the pre-San Diego script, it was a lot darker, and it's probably a good thing they cut it. It's Ian sort of walking with a heavy limp, and Roland sort of falls in the step behind him and asks him if he's okay. Ian doesn't answer. Roland asks, sort of says, "Did I ask the wrong question?" And Ian replies with, "Have you heard of Gambler's Ruin?" which we've talked about before on the show. Roland asks, "What's that?" and Malcolm says, "A sophisticated phenomenon." Says everything in the world goes in streaks. It's real. You can see it everywhere, in weather, in river flooding, in baseball, in blackjack, in stock markets. Once things go bad, they tend to stay bad. Bad things cluster. They go to hell together. Roland replies to him.
I know what scene you're talking about, and it's really, I mean, it's kind of interesting because it's very Malcolm, and in the same way, it's also very Crichton.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, yeah, and so the scene kind of plays out longer.
Yeah, because we get Roland sort of asking Malcolm, feel a bit blue, do we? And Malcolm sort of glances at Kelly, who's walking a bit further ahead, and Malcolm
Hmm.
replies, just flawed, very deeply flawed. Roland asks Malcolm, why did you come here? Malcolm replies, so that the others know about this place. Roland replies, why should they? And Malcolm, because it exists. Uh, Roland, it still exists even if whether or not people know about it.
Hmm.
But then Malcolm sort of, yes, and people live in the absence of truth. Roland says, so the truth is more important than your real life, or than your life. Malcolm lowers his voice, I don't care about my life, but if I ever thought for a second it should be in danger. And Roland sort of glazes towards Kelly's, who's about 10 yards ahead of him, and he asks Malcolm if she's his.
Yeah.
And Kelly can, of course, hear what they're saying. Malcolm replies with, I'm afraid so. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with kids. I never should have had her. Which is a dark place to go, sort of
Hmm.
walking here next to Roland.
But then he takes it even darker. I mean, he then starts like questioning whether humans should even exist in the first place, and whether or not they're just like a walking extinction, and Roland
Yeah,
actually has to, like, he just grabs him by the scruff and just shakes him.
yeah,
He's like, "Don't you? I'm fighting panic here. Don't make this worse for me."
yeah, exactly. Because they sort of, after he sort of wonders why he had Kelly.
Hmm. Yeah, and she overhears him, and I think it's sad that, I mean, just the way Kep describes it in the script is that this just, I can imagine the image of hurt just across her face, you know?
Yeah, and after everything she's just witnessed and experienced as well, and now to hear her father sort of disown her,
Yeah.
it's really dark. And as you
Hmm.
said, it feels very Crichton. It's sort of similar to what Malcolm does in the novel, where on his fever dream or dosed up with morphine starts to go rambling about how humans are just destroying the world and all that sort of stuff. And it happens here where in the script he's talking to Roland about all this stuff, and all of a sudden they just sort of stop and look around, like the whole group of survivors just stopped and mouth open watching Ian
Hmm.
as he's sort of sitting there saying we're all doomed, we should die, we don't deserve to be here, and all this sort of stuff. And as you said, yeah, Roland grabs him and sort of says to him, cut it out. Sort of everyone's scared and trying to keep everything together, and here you are being the doomsayer and all
Hmm.
this sort of stuff as well, which was just interesting. But then they cut back to Malcolm asking Roland why he's here, and we get the whole somewhere on this island exists the greatest predator that's ever lived. But in the film here we get Nick sort of say that. But
Hmm.
back to the film, Roland looks down and then back up, not stopping, as Nick tries to hand him the gum. And Nick sort of laughs a bit and says, you look like you have a shred of common sense. What the hell are you doing here? And I love here too, because you can really see the height difference between Roland and Nick. Like
Yeah.
just how tall
Vince Vaughn?
Vince Vaughn. Last night when I was writing the notes, I had Peter and Vince, and I'm like, Vince. As the Chris Evans debate again. Just couldn't. I just kept on thinking Van Allen. It's not Van Allen, and I said to the wife, I said, he was in Dodgeball. Who was it? But yeah, great sort of difference in height here. But Roland sort of comes back with this great little monologue here. Somewhere on the island is the greatest predator that ever lived, and the second greatest predator must take him down.
Which, honestly, is probably one of my favorite lines from Roland.
Yeah.
I mean, I like a lot of his lines, but that's just one that sticks with you. That he considers himself inferior to a primeval animal. You know, you won't get many people to admit that.
But then I wonder if he's looking at the right animal. I can't remember which way we sided with the sort of the hunting patterns of the carnivores when we had the listener feedback episode. Friend of the show, Matt, sort of asked a question, which predators we thought had the best attack patterns and that and strategies in the film.
Oh, well,
I'm guessing he'd say Tyrannosaur mainly because it's the large, or as far as we know, the largest carnivore on the island.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I mean. I mean, when you think about like successful and intelligent and kind of the best predator, it's Velociraptor hands down. But when you consider the greatest, who's the great dinosaur that everybody thinks of? Who's everybody's favorite dinosaur? It's T-Rex. You know?
And as we see in that deleted Namibia scene, he says, "Tarja, you go up to my ranch and tell me what's on the wall that would even sort of get me interested in this expedition."
Mm-hmm.
A Tyrannosaur head on the wall would be sort of the most iconic of on-island stuff to do, and not only that, I'm sure he would have sort of done a little bit of research and either seen, okay, Velociraptor pack hunter and just gone, nah, not doing that. And possibly even sort of seen that what happened from the last Velociraptor attack we seen with Muldoon.
Mm-hmm.
And then one little nitpick I've got here, like how he's saying I'm the second greatest predator. He's walking with his gun pointed in the air in the downpour, and that barrel's just filling with water.
Oh, I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Well, especially the amount of rain that's falling.
Mm-hmm.
Those two big shotgun barrels pointing upwards are just going to have... They're like funnels.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But
he's definitely going to have some wet powder.
Yeah. Well, we see in a minute where he sort of puts it down to change arm. I would have loved if half a litre of water just ran out. But because Nick gestures here to his gun and tries to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And says, "Are you going to..."
He kind of grabs at it, and then Roland just moves it to his other shoulder so that Nick can't.
Well, that's the other thing too, because Nick gestures and says, "Are you going to use that?" And Roland says, "If he doesn't surrender, yes." And Nick just grabs the end of the barrel and pulls it towards his face like he wants to look down, do a Bugs Bunny and look down the barrel of Elmer Fudd's blunderbuss. It's a very weird thing for Nick being, as he said, in Bosnia and that, so knowing firearm danger, and then just grabbing the end of the gun and looking down the, trying to look down the end of the barrels. It's weird, but Roland sort of wrestles it from his grip and puts it on his other arm then. And Nick just laughs and says the animals exist on the planet for the first time in tens of millions of years, and the only way you can express yourself is to kill it.
Yeah.
Which, yes and no. As an environmentalist, that's exactly how you'd think. As a big white hunter, and yes, no one else has had the chance to hunt it. There's probably some fortune and glory there, but that's not really what he's there for. But I'm sure it would start quite a lucrative black market industry of big white hunters going to sauna, which I'm surprised hasn't really come up before in the franchise.
Yeah,
at least poaching.
Alone.
Yeah, poaching mainly, but sort of that we get a little hint of it in Jurassic Park 3 with the parasail tours past the island, but that's pretty minuscule. Yeah, and then we end the minute with Roland saying, "Remember that chap about 20 years ago?" I forget his name. Which do you remember that guy about 5 years ago that lived in America? And it's pretty general.
Yeah, but I mean, the people who climb Everest are an exclusive group, so you can look up the 1987 people who climbed Everest without oxygen.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to that in the next minute. That he's actually referring to a climber that climbed Everest without any oxygen, and people asked him why'd he go up there to die, because it is pretty much a death unless you've got pretty unique physiology. If you go up there without oxygen, you'll suffocate, just because the elevation. But the bloke had replied that I went up there to live, not die. So.
And we could probably talk about him next semester. Next semester. Next minute. It was Reynold Messner and Peter Havelier.
Yeah.
Who did it in May of 1978.
Yeah. Which is a bit further back than 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, from now it is, but from 1997.
Oh, 78. Yeah. No, good point. Yeah, it is too. Yeah. And it's sort of. Yeah, and it just comes down to sort of the way the minute by minute thing is, how we end here. But if we hadn't ended here, then we would have got to the Everest part. But we just end here. Remember that chap 20 years ago? I forget his name, and we're left with vagueness. But yeah, anything else on 68 you want to bring up before we close it out for the week?
No, I think we're good.
Lovely.
All right, guys. Let's get the hell out of here.
Contact details are on the website, thelostworldminute.com. You can email feedback to thelostworldminute@gmail.com, Facebook, The Lost World Minute, Twitter @The Lost World Minute, and Instagram, The Lost World Minute.
Easy to remember.
Yeah, very easy to remember. Right. David, thank you for joining me for this record.
You're welcome.
And we'll be back. I've been Brad.
I'm Dave.
And we'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
It is absolutely imperative that we work with the Costa Rican Department of Biological Preserves to establish a set of rules for the preservation and isolation of that island. These creatures require our absence to survive, not our help. And if we could only step aside and trust in nature, life will find a way.